Today is day one of our 31-day challenge where we together study the book of Proverbs. There's 31 chapters in Proverbs and 31 days in most months. So I hope you'll accept the challenge and stay with me through this study for all 31 days. The book of Proverbs is saturated with wisdom, and prioritizing the Bible is the only way that any of us can ever have godly wisdom. And of course, we need his wisdom to face the increasing chaos of our carnal culture, and we need his wisdom to deal with the day-to-day pressures of life. So with that said, would you consider with me the content of Proverbs 1? And I invite you to open your Bible and to follow along. And personally, it helps me to understand the content if I outline the chapter. So I broke up these 33 verses into 5 sections. First, Proverbs 1 through 7 explain to us the purpose of Proverbs. And if you're in the habit of marking in your Bible, you might section off those verses and notate that they are the purpose of Proverbs. After all, you see in verse number 1, the Proverbs of Solomon, and then the little phrase in verse number 6, to understand a proverb and the interpretation. So what is the purpose of Proverbs? He answers that in the verses in between. And he does it through 5 infinitives. He wants us to know, to perceive, to receive, to give, and to understand. And what is it that he wants us to know, to perceive, to receive, to give, and to understand? If I had to answer that question in one word, the answer is wisdom. Fools despise wisdom, but Solomon wants you to saturate yourself with heavenly wisdom. That's the purpose of Proverbs. Secondly, notice the importance of parents in verses 8 and 9. And you could section off those 2 verses and give them that heading. Those verses remind us that godly parents are a source for godly wisdom. They've lived longer than their children. They've made mistakes and they've had successes. And if they were godly parents, they very likely walked with God, often for decades. Solomon highlights the wisdom of heeding the instruction of godly parents. Thirdly, verses 10 through 19 describe pressure. So maybe section off those verses and give them that heading. And specifically, those verses address evil social pressure. I mean, sinful friends or our wicked culture that's all around us will sometimes attempt to entice us to do evil things. Social pressure or peer pressure is an issue for people at all ages and stages. Hopefully your friends aren't enticing you to steal with murderous intent, as is described here. But so often evil friends or an evil culture, they'll apply heavy social pressure to get us to do things that we know are ungodly and unwise. And if I were to bring my first 3 points together, really to summarize the first 19 verses, Solomon is saying, if you're going to be a wise son, listen to and obey your godly parents. And don't be the fool who caves into the evil enticements that so often come from social pressures. Fourthly, the problem. Verses 20 through 33 explain a huge problem. And that is that simple ones love simplicity, and the scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. It's a problem. So wisdom personified, she stretches out her hand to you, and she says, but ye set at naught all of my counsel. Many people fail to choose the fear of the Lord, verse 29, and therefore they lack the benefits that come from having heavenly wisdom. Instead, they prefer to live in their simplicity, to live in their scornfulness, to live in their foolishness. It's a problem. Fifthly, there are promises made. It's verses 31 through 33, and it includes both negative promises and positive promises. Do you see those promises in those verses? I mean, if you reject God's wisdom, Solomon is saying, I promise you, you will eat of the fruit of your own way, and you will be filled with your own foolish devices. And if you keep up heading down the path of a fool, ultimately it could slay you or destroy you. However, there are some positive promises given. If you embrace God's path, if you hearken unto wisdom, you shall dwell safely and shall be quiet from fear of evil. So by way of review, this text explains to us the purpose of Proverbs, the importance of parents, the danger of social pressure, the problem in the heart of a fool, and the promise of either personal destruction if you reject God's wisdom, or the promise to dwell in safety if you accept God's wisdom. This is what God taught me through Proverbs 1. So be sure to read the proverb on your own and to comment below and let me know what the Lord showed you through this passage. I trust this Bible-based study has strengthened you. So be sure, though, to check out our upcoming Strength for Life video, which will explain Proverbs 2.